I genuinely believe these are the most important episodes you will ever listen to. I don't just mean of this podcast, I mean of any podcast. This is part 2 of the 14-part series, and the goal, which I've come to through my self-improvement journey, which then led me to ask questions and so on, the goal with this is finding universal principles for a good human life. Not dogma, not productivity hacks or whatever. Real principles that actually work, an investigation into truth, you could say. And the mission is enlightenment. So, if you're not already doing so, follow these podcasts to not miss the rest of the 14-part series, which I, again, believe to be the most important podcast episodes ever created. As this is part 2, the previous part was called enlightenment, and what we talked about was basically that enlightenment is realizing a few things, but mainly that there is no meaning, we know so little, and we will all be forgotten. Those 3 things, what Camus would call the absurd in a way, is enlightenment, but then in reaction to that, instead of falling into nihilism or despair, we revolt against it by living fully anyway, because you want to think of it as a table with ingredients. You don't know why you're there, you don't know where you are, but you are there, so you might as well do something. And that's where revolt comes in. Revolt is realizing there is no meaning, enlightenment, but doing stuff anyway just because you can, or just because you're there, so you might as well, just because you want to. And with revolt, you have actions, we'll call them life-affirming actions, but you also have self-improvement, which allows you to better play with the ingredients at your table. It allows you to create more things. So that's a quick summary of the previous episode. I would still recommend you go listen to it before you listen to this one. Honestly, I know I meant to say, listen to this one first so I don't lose you. No, actually listen to the first one so this one makes a lot more sense. So in this episode, we're going to talk about 3, or actually 2 main things: productivity and consciousness. And consciousness is the opposite of oblivion, which is also what we'll talk about just now, actually. The default state for the modern man is oblivion, a kind of walking sleep in which one drifts through life without awareness, questioning nothing, and choosing nothing. We are born conscious, so as kids we are conscious, but the world steadily strips us of that awareness. The danger is that man in oblivion can spend an entire lifetime in this state without even realizing it. What is oblivion? Oblivion is not being aware. It's the opposite of consciousness, so we'll define consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness is not only being aware of the present moment, but it's also being aware of what actually helps you. So with knowledge comes consciousness. If you don't know anything about healthy eating, you would probably just eat whatever there is. Like if you put a caveman in McDonald's, he'll probably just order a Big Mac and eat it, but he can't really be conscious because he doesn't know it's unhealthy. So consciousness is being active and moving, knowing what you need to do to get to your goals. That's what it is. And that's productivity, which we'll talk about in a bit. And the reason the default state for modern man is oblivion is because waking up is not passive. Becoming conscious is not easy. It is an active expenditure of energy against the natural pull of oblivion. Our biology defaults to the path of least resistance. Choosing awareness, clarity, and intention requires deliberate effort. But without that energy, the mind, like water, goes stagnant. And just like if you have water in a pond, you'll have moss and whatever grows in it. Whereas if you have a river, it's going to flow and you won't have any of the dirty and unwanted things. A good analogy for this is consciousness is really the only way to be free. Because without consciousness, you don't choose yourself. Somebody else chooses for you. That's why power and corrupt systems rely on people being oblivious and just doing what they're told and not thinking. Because if they actually thought for themselves, if they were conscious and aware of what was going on and realizing that it's not actually helping them, they would revolt. The people in power don't want that. So power relies on oblivion. Consciousness, the opposite of oblivion, is the only way to be free. A conscious man who questions his goals and his direction is dangerous to those who profit from compliance. If you actually think about what you want to do with your life, so you're actually conscious, that endangers the university systems that rely on you paying thousands through your nose every single year for an education that doesn't actually get you anything. Unless, of course, you want to be a doctor or something that requires a certificate. Most people don't even know what they're doing. They're oblivious. They don't know what they want to do. More oblivious. and they just do what they're told, which is go to uni, because everybody's just oblivious except for the people at the top. Becoming conscious is not merely self-improvement, it is a defiant act against systems designed to keep you asleep. And the way you can see this best illustrated is if you're ever imagine you're with a child, right? He just looks at you and he says, "Why is your nose so big?" Most people would never say that. Maybe if his parent is around, they're going to run and say, "Oh, you shouldn't say that. Sorry, sir. He didn't mean it." Yes, he did. You might have a big nose. I mean, I have a pretty big nose. And so you have the child's unfiltered honesty. It just says what it thinks. It's conscious. It's free. But then you have adults that rush to educate the kids, educate in brackets, or in whatever, quotation marks, and stamp it out of them. That's why we are born conscious. Naturally speaking, we are compelled to be conscious, because if you're not conscious, imagine your caveman ancestors didn't think about what they would need to survive. They didn't think, oh, I should get food. They thought, oh, I should listen to what the tiger wants, which is to eat me. They wouldn't survive. So we are naturally meant to be conscious, even if it requires energy. But now it's stamped out of us so that you can form. That's why as a kid you're told to shut up and listen. That's why you're told to do this and that, instead of actually thinking about, wait a second, why am I doing any of this? Which is an act of consciousness, an act of defiance. So oblivion is defined as working towards goals that are not yours. A life spent serving someone else's vision, whether out of social pressure, fear, or habit. It's a life that will end in bitterness and regret. You ask dying people what is their biggest regret, one of them is always not doing what they wanted to do, doing what they thought they should have done instead of doing what they actually wanted to do. Becoming an accountant when you want to be a painter, but being an accountant is safer. It's not safe when you regret your entire life. The only goals worth pursuing are those you have chosen consciously and intentionally for yourself. A life spent pursuing goals that are not yours brings misery for yourself and those around you. You have to realize that completing goals that are not yours, doing somebody else's goals, is literally what a robot does. That's what coding is. When you code a computer, you are telling it what to do. It's like your servant. It's a slave to you. And that's what you are if you don't set your own goals. And you might think, well, no, I do what I want, and I haven't set any goals, but I don't work towards others' goals. If you don't think about your goals, if you don't think about where you want your life to go, you will just follow the default path. Someone else will make goals for you. That's the saying I really like. If you don't set your own goals, somebody else will. And unless you're fine with being a little bitch, I would suggest you think of your own goals. And it's a bit like if you've seen those really twisted trees or plants or whatever, they grow in really weird ways, not because they want to, they just want to grow straight up, but because people put barriers and force them where to go. Would you rather be the straight, healthy tree that just goes up and does what it wants to do? Or would you rather be the twisty tree that is molested by humans? And by nature, we are not designed to be aimless. We are wired to pursue, to build, and to solve. And denying this is not freedom, it's self-betrayal. Denying your desire to pursue things, to build things, to create, is not freedom from suffering, as a lot of people who misinterpret Buddhism would think. It's just self-betrayal. The restlessness you feel when you're just idle is not a weakness. It is your nature calling you back to what you are meant to do. We are meant to strive, to explore, and to conquer, not to scroll, jack off, and stay indoors. And the third part that comes with consciousness is questioning everything, especially your direction. Most men never lift their heads to check where they are heading. It's like if you walk in the street of a big city, you notice most people are just looking down. They're not even looking straight. They just look down on their phones, on whatever, and they don't even look where they're going. You don't want to do that. You want to occasionally lift your head, see, are you going in the right direction? If you are, head down, keep going. If you're not, pivot, and then you can go. You must periodically zoom out and examine the trajectory of your life and ask honestly whether it reflects what you truly want. A small course correction now prevents a catastrophic detour years later. You've probably heard this analogy that if you take a flight from, I think it's LA to New York, and you go off just 1 degree at the start, you're going to end up at Miami or Costa Rica or something. I don't even know where you would end up. Or Africa. I don't know. You would miss it by hundreds of miles. So it's a lot easier to pivot even just slightly right now to make sure you're on the right path later on, because it's harder later on. And so this leads us to productivity. Productivity is not busyness. Productivity is not filling your calendar. It's not doing many things at once, not staying perpetually busy. True productivity is taking the most effective or efficient steps towards your specific goal. Motion without direction is not progress. It is just exhaustion. A lot of people say that productivity is just this restless, always doing things, do work, just be a little sheep or a slave or whatever. No, motion is not progress. If you just walk in circles in a desert, you're not actually making progress, you're just moving, which doesn't actually help you. It drains you of energy that you could spend escaping the desert. So productivity is working towards your goals. It's taking the most effective or efficient path towards your goals. Why effective or efficient? Well, you have to differentiate it between two things. Effective is for things you care about, because effective means you optimize for the right result. It doesn't matter how long or how hard it is, you just care about getting the best result. It's like when you were in school, if you really cared about, or if you're still in school, and you really care about this one subject, chemistry or physics or math, because it's really important, you will try to be the most effective you can by trying to get the best grade on that. Or if you're just a nerd, right? But if you're the student that does more of the 80-20 rule, that wants to get good grades but doesn't want to spend their entire time studying, then you would try to be efficient. You would try to get the best result you can, or some desired result that isn't perfect but pretty good, with the least amount of effort. That's where the 80-20 rule comes in. So for the things you really care about, stuff that really matter to you, subjects, goals, people, you want to be the most effective. You want to get the best result, no matter how long or how hard it is. But with things that you don't care about, but kind of have to do for a separate reason, then again, you don't really have to do anything. And if you think you have to, I would probably question that and reflect on, why am I doing this? Is there anybody actually forcing me to do this? Well, if you're in school, it's a bit harder because you might go to jail if you don't go to school, or your parents might. So that kind of sucks. But in that case, you want to be efficient. What that means is it's like cleaning dishes. You're going to try and be efficient. If you don't want the cleanest dishes, you just want them to be clean enough so you can eat off of them, but without spending too much time. And so another example is a surgeon must be effective in the operation. You want him to do the best job possible. It doesn't matter if it takes half an hour or 1-2 hours longer, but you want him to be efficient at filing paperwork. You don't care if the signature or the handwriting on the paperwork is not immaculate. You would rather the paperwork be done because you kind of have to do it, but you don't want him to waste too much time on it. Effectiveness versus efficiency. And generally, slightly unrelated, but I put it on here, is the right path is usually the hardest one. Most paths that seem easier or smarter are simply more comfortable. They give the illusion of progress while leading away from the goal. The harder path is hard precisely because it is the real path. Choosing ease over difficulty is how mediocrity is chosen without ever admitting it. Imagine you're going to the mountain. You could be one of two types of hikers or climbers. The first guy just goes on the steepest route, maybe he even has to climb vertically, but then he actually gets to the summit and has a beautiful view. Whereas the other one prefers to take the easier route through the valley, thinking it might be faster because it's easier, but then he never gets to the summit. You don't get to the summit through a valley. You only go straight or down, which goes to show that a lot of things, without being actively maintained, decay. Your body without movement decays. Like a pond without movement, so just water in a pond, you're going to have frogs, you're going to have weird green plants or whatever that you don't want there. Entropy is the gradual deterioration of everything because energy wants to spread out. Being conscious, being productive is reversing entropy and forcing it to go one way. And so by taking the harder path, which is usually the right path when it comes to reaching your goals, reaching enlightenment, or revolting, you must sacrifice the present for a better future, but do so wisely. Productivity often means deferring immediate pleasure for a better return later. This is not misery, it is an investment. The alternative is indulging the present moment at the expense of the future. You trade brief pleasure now, that it's pleasure, it's not even happiness, for long-term suffering. You get a little reward now, like you take your little free sample, but then you have to starve the rest of your life. Or you could skip the free sample, but buy a big cake or a big pizza or whatever, or maybe a more healthy alternative, like a big piece of meat, and then you can have that for the rest of your life and share it with the people you love and actually be happy. And therefore, productivity is the basis for self-improvement. It's the basis for revolting. All self-improvement is productivity, which is doing what you need to do to get from where you are right now to where you want to go. I guess a better analogy from the free samples is if you're a farmer and you have seeds, you could eat them right now, which wouldn't even taste too good, but I guess it's food and you're hungry. Or you could plant them, and then when they grow into whatever you want them to grow into, fruit trees or corn or wheat or whatever, you can make dough and you can make bread, which tastes a lot better than just seeds. And so now that you know that, you have to realize that I've almost cursed you in a way, because the worst position you can find yourself in is knowing and not acting. Before watching this, perhaps you didn't know about any of this. You didn't think about, I can actually work towards my goals. I can make my life better. It's obvious when you say that. Most people don't think about it. The worst position is knowing about this stuff but not acting on it. A man who has no awareness of these truths at least has the comfort of ignorance. But a man who understands the path yet refuses to walk it lives in the worst possible state, haunted by the knowledge of what he could be, yet trapped by inaction. This is the most miserable position of all. You are teased with the knowledge of a better life, yet are unable to get yourself to do the necessary work to get there. Most people never even know, but when you discover, you could either renounce to it and just say, oh, it's all bullshit, but then the truth will slowly eat away at you, or you could embrace it and actually push for change, go forward and improve your life. However, you must also beware of paths that look like progress. One danger is obviously not embarking on path of self-improvement, of self-development and all the rest, but equally as dangerous is paths that look like progress but aren't actually progress, or maybe they are, but they're not the ultimate progress. They're not what you're meant to do or what you want to do ultimately, or they're not the best rate of improvement. So not taking the path is as dangerous as taking the wrong path. There's this, it's not a common saying, I think it's from Hercules, one of the stories written about Hercules, which is the danger is the sheer amount of opportunities you have, which either A, leads to indecision or leads you to making a worse decision. Tough example for this would be, should I go to the gym or should I do CrossFit? Should I do functional training or should I just do bodybuilding? Should I do sprinting or running, swimming or jumping? All of these questions, which one should I do? Honestly, don't overthink it. That's the same with most things. Just make a choice, but you must be really careful with making the right choice, because where in the past perhaps you didn't have so many opportunities, you would just be a farmer, you would just do this and that. You have so many opportunities now. The danger is taking a lesser path, either from laziness or just making a mistake. You didn't know which one was the best one. But then you also have stuff that feels productive but isn't. Feels like you're making progress towards your goal, definition of productivity, but isn't. So for example, reading books about fitness instead of going to the gym, trying the movements out, seeing how it feels, and learning as you do it. Planning and replanning a business without ever actually launching or building anything. And the man who only talks is the most embarrassing. Having big ambitions costs nothing. Talking about what you will do is the easiest part. Without execution, dreams are not aspirations. They are vanity. The man who speaks loudest about his goals and acts least upon them has done only the cheap half of the work. If you're an architect, you could draw and redraw the blueprints and the plans for years and years and just keep doing it. If you don't actually put the first brick down, you will never have a house. It's easier to lift the little light pencil and write. It's harder to direct people and mix the cement and put the bricks and build a real house. But that's the only way you'll have shelter. That's the only way you'll get paid. That's the only way anything good happens. Planning never change anything. That being said, planning is important. It's like that quote from Roosevelt. I think it was Roosevelt. Planning is useless, but plans are essential. Something like that. So how do you actually live this? Well, consciousness, again, the knowledge of what is good for you and the knowledge of working towards your own goals, can be practiced on a small scale. So meditation, stuff like that, which sharpens your awareness of the present moment and what your true desire is. And on a larger scale, it's regularly questioning your goals, your choices, and your direction that keeps your life on course. A lot of people, and I mean even people on self-improvement, I mean even people who you would look up to and think, oh, that guy is great, he's killing it, he's making so much money, he has a wife, kids, whatever, don't question their life enough. Now, you shouldn't get to the point where you question it so much you don't do anything. It was a story, I think a friend of mine told me. He knew this guy who was making a lot of money from a certain business, and if he stayed a bit longer, like even just a few months longer, he would make so much more money because of his shares in the company or whatever. But instead of that, he realized he didn't have the same passion for what he was doing. He was conscious, he questioned what he was doing, and he said, I don't want to be doing this anymore. Yes, I could make more money, but I would rather, let's say, do gardening. That's not what he wanted to do, but just as an example. He wants to do gardening. You might think, oh, but it's stupid, he's giving up the money. But if it's not what he wants to be doing, what is more valuable than money? Time. I mean, there's probably some other things, but time is way more valuable than money. I talked about that in the previous episode, I think. So yeah, on a larger scale, you question your goals, your choices, and your direction to keep your life on course. Even if you think it's true, even this stuff, right? You apply this stuff, you become productive, conscious, enlightened, you revolt, you get on self-improvement, you build a great physique. You should never stop questioning the things you're doing. Don't become paralyzed by it. Don't keep changing your mind, but never become so certain that you aren't willing to hear something else, because that's when progress stalls. When you're not willing to question yourself, that's when progress stops. And both of those are required, both the daily habit of meditation or prayer and the broader, more general idea of questioning yourself, thinking about, is this really what I want to be doing? Are these my goals? What are my goals? Should I keep going in this direction? Should I pivot? All of that stuff. But you must always realize that the goalpost will keep moving and it will never stop. So instead of hoping to get to someplace and then you'll be happy, I talked about this previous time, you want to simply fall in love with the pursuit of the goal. You will never reach a final destination after which you can rest. Every goal achieved reveals the next one. It's like if you walk up a mountain, you think you get to the top, but then you see there's another mountain that's even taller, so you have to run down, back up, and then do it again. This is not frustrating, it is by design. If you only hope to get to the peak of the mountains, you will hope for a fleeting instant before realizing there's more to do. So instead of that, you should, I don't like enjoy the process, because a lot of people say it with the wrong way of like, oh, go with the flow and all this shit. But you really want to learn to enjoy the journey, or the process, yes, because that's all there is. There is no destination. The satisfaction is not in arrival, it's in movement, and more specifically, progress towards the peak. Seeing your muscles grow, or making more money, or meeting more people, or whatever your goal is, seeing you make progress towards that is the best feeling in the world. Seeing yourself improve has no parallels. I mean, thinking about how I was just a few weeks ago, a few months ago, and looking at me now and thinking, holy shit, I've gotten so much better, fills me with the purest sense of happiness. And everybody else who does improve tells me the exact same thing. Learn to love the process, the dance, not the end of the song. I already talked about the analogy of dancing. You can listen to the previous episode for that. And like any dance, you cannot enjoy the end of it. You must learn to be a good dancer, yet always stay playful with life. And then with this, you want to maintain a slight dissatisfaction, always a slight dissatisfaction. Contentment is the enemy of growth. Being happy exactly as you are is the enemy of growth. There's this saying, I think it was from the Buddha, you are perfect as you are, but you can always be better. That's a great way to put it, because you don't want to be so dissatisfied that you hate life and you don't enjoy anything and just hope, oh, one day I'll be happy when I reach this and that, because again, the horizon will keep moving backwards. But you don't want to be so content and think, oh, I'm great already, I'm perfect as I am and all this stuff. If you're fat, you're not perfect as you are, buddy. You have places to go, which should excite you. The fact that you can make progress and improve and create and change your life. So always keep a slight dissatisfaction. You are perfect as you are, but you can always be better. Honestly, I don't agree with perfect as you are. It is an interesting quote. I think it has a good balance between the two. You want to maintain a productive dissatisfaction. That means not anguish, not anxiety, but a persistent hunger that keeps you reaching forward. At some periods of your life, it's going to be stronger. Some others, it's going to be less strong, but you always want it to be there. And in fact, I think the best place to get to is that you have this insatiable desire for progress that scares most regular people that just waste their time. But at the same time, you love it and you enjoy everything. You are happy even if you're not where you want to be. That's exactly it. You want to have this immense desire for progress. I mean, unbelievable desire for progress, which will lead you to actually put in the work that gets you where you want to be. Yet at the same time, you want to be happy now. You never want to tell yourself, I'll only be happy when I get this. Because again, you will never get to the place where you can be happy. You must allow yourself to be happy now. And also, happiness shouldn't be the goal, but that's a whole separate topic. And we'll end off on a quote from Gandhi. You must be the change you want to see in the world. I don't know what he meant by that. But what I mean by that is you must change yourself first in order to be able to change the world. The conscious and productive man does not only benefit himself by becoming the highest version of himself, he becomes a better father, a better leader, a better force in the world. The inner work is the outer work. Nothing of value is built from the outside in. It is only the conscious man who can be a good father and show up in the right way. It is only the conscious man who can change the world.